Welcome to episode number 176. I'm Paula Williams.
And I'm John Williams.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help everybody out there in the aviation world sell more products and services. But wait, what is the title of 176?
The title is Aviation Writers, Speakers, and Educators are also salespeople.
As is everybody else in the world, they just don't realize it.
Absolutely. So why do we help aviation people sell more of their products and services?
To help everybody understand what they're supposed to be doing.
So that they will have the revenue to take better care of their people and also to innovate in the industry. So what's good for the industry is also good for us, right?
And everybody else.
Exactly. All right. So writers, speakers, and educators often have this thought about sales folks, right?
Right.
You know, and the used car salesman comes to mind, the pushy, the rallies, the crazy sales tactics, the strong-armed things, the closes, all that stuff that people don't like about sales, right?
Yep.
And this is actually something that's kind of baked in to journalism, right? When you go to journalism school, there is a firewall between editorial and advertising. And, they sometimes call that the light side and the dark side of the newspaper. You have to sell advertising in order to support the newspaper. But the advertising folks should never talk to the editorial folks, especially about who's doing advertising. It should never influence the process of making news and things like that, so that the paper can remain above the fray, as it were, and to retain its semblance of impartiality. So there are good reasons for that, but sales is not always your enemy, right?
No, and full disclosure, I used to sell used cars. I did not.
You didn't look like that, though.
No, I did. I dressed better and didn't have a cigar.
Exactly. Right. And I know you did a lot of things that made your sales manager really unhappy while you were doing that. But there are things that we do all the time, and that is to not sell when it is not appropriate, right?
Exactly. In fact, I probably made them more business long term by doing some of the things I did.
Right. Exactly. So these attitudes about sales come from our families. And, this is my dad. And he grew up in Utah. There is a predominant...
If you're looking at the picture, he's the guy on the left.
On the way left, exactly. Anyway, this is the last picture I have of my dad. But anyway, he grew up in Utah, where they have the predominant faith, which can be... what is the term? Pushy and persistent. And I'm sure everybody has this in their area in one form or another. And it rubbed him the wrong way, so he had some attitudes about sales and about missionaries and about other things. He also had a really good friend that got into one of the multi-level sales organizations and had a really bad experience with it. He ended up putting a lot of money into it and turning into a person that, it almost cost them their friendship. So, anyway, my dad had a lot of attitudes about sales that came from those experiences that he passed on to me that I have had. I'm still struggling to catch myself having some attitudes about sales, right?
Yeah, but I did sales in one of those multi-level marketing things too.
Exactly. And, it's not that those are evil in and of themselves, but a lot of people have bad experiences either because they get into it with the wrong idea, or they get into it the wrong way, or they're involved with really pushy people. Lots of things happen that make that not cool,
I don't
right?
think a lot of people understand that everybody in our society is selling. Mm-hmm. They may use the word convince their boss, convince their coworker, convince somebody, but it's sales.
It is. Exactly. So, the question is, would you rather be the best author, the best-selling author, or both?
Right.
Okay. Now, being a best author is a a very admirable pursuit. But, if nobody is reading what you're writing, that can be very satisfying to you yourself, but you sure as heck aren't going to make a living doing it, right?
Nope, you're not.
And you're also not going to be influencing very many people because nobody's reading what you're writing.
That's right.
So, being a best-selling author is what counts in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal lists and the Amazon lists and all of those other things, right?
Right.
It also counts even if you're just writing articles. How many people read your articles will depend on whether you get another assignment from that magazine or from that publication again, right?
Exactly.
They're all looking at the numbers nowadays, and they all can look at the numbers nowadays. So now that there are very good numbers to look at, since a lot of these publications are now online, people can see, how much time did they spend in your article, how many people came there, where did they come from, all of that stuff is now countable, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So if you're a speaker, would you rather speak to an empty room or to a packed room? You have to do the same speech. Now, some of us who have a little bit of a phobia about public speaking would rather speak to an empty room.
But now what's the purpose of a speech? You're selling. You're trying to convince.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Read, sell, convince, sell. Same thing.
Exactly.
People.
Right. And if there's nobody in the room, you haven't done a very good job of being an influencer, right?
Right.
Okay. So as a salesperson, or as a speaker, you still have to be a salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you're an educator, would you rather have students remember what you say, or would you rather have them learn well enough to pass the exam and then forget? Now, this is Elliot Olorenshaw at Leading Edge Aviation. I don't think he's even still there. This was a while back when I was doing my private. And, a lot of the instructors had stories that they would tell while we were doing the pre-flights and other things about things that had gone wrong with different ones of their students or different things that had gone wrong on their own flights and how to prevent them. And those things stick in my head a heck of a lot better than the things I just read from the book. If somebody took off with a tow bar still attached, crazy things happen. But those are things that I am never going to take off without having checked probably twice, because I've heard stories about those kinds of things that have happened to people that I know. So, a lot of these instructors are very, very good salespeople and very, very good at convincing you of the things you need to be keeping track of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So if nobody is following you, you're not a leader. You're just a guy taking a walk, right? Have you heard that quote before?
No, but it makes sense.
Exactly. So, you might think that you're a fantastic speaker, and you might be. You might be a fantastic writer, and you might be. You may be a fantastic educator, and you might be. But if you are not filling the room, if you are not pitching your articles, if you are not selling your ideas, then you're not doing as good of a job as you could be. Right? Okay. So you can be great at sales and still keep your values intact.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible?
Of course.
Okay. There's one other story I wanted you to share, and that is Mr. Black.
Mr. Black.
What have you read today?
So my third grade teacher, Mr. Black. We walked in the very first day, and he started talking about books.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very fast talker and emphasizes books all the time. He says, when you go to get a job interview, people are going to ask you about what books have you read today? What books are you reading now? What books do you plan to read?
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to talk about these things.
Exactly. So what did he sell you?
Reading.
Mm-hmm. And was that a good thing?
Oh, heck yes.
See, doctors even have to sell their patients on quitting smoking or eating more vegetables or whatever it is that they have to do. If they are a great salesperson, they will be a much better doctor.
I spent some time in the military, and you have got to be a salesman in the military.
Really?
Oh, big time. You're making presentations to the higher-ups. You're selling.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that makes perfect sense. But you won't get there by doing a lot of the things that they advise. If you remember the Zig Ziglar model of selling, very high pressure, very scripted closes, other kinds of things. People know when they're being manipulated. And people know when you're in it for yourself and not necessarily caring about what they're after, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not in it for a win-win. you're in it for objective A, and you don't care who you upset, hurt, or maim on your way to get there, who you pry the wallet out of their cold, dark hands or whatever.
Exactly.
This is an Amway rally, and these things have always driven me crazy. Because people get so emotional and so wrapped up and so everything, and then they go home to their regular life and nothing changes. It's just insane. Or they become really rabid about making sales for a while, and they are all in it for the organization and in it for themselves, and they don't really care about their prospects, right? Mm-hmm. And that really makes the difference to us. So, yeah, think about the best teacher you've ever had. Do you have a Mr. Black in your past? And what did they sell you, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to tell you about a teacher that I know. This is Master Zheng. He's the guy in the dark jacket in stripes, the tallest guy in the picture. But he is a Taekwondo instructor. My son's old Taekwondo instructor, and he is incredibly good at selling ideas to people. And one of the ideas that he would sell is that you can break a board, right? Mm. And he taught my son, who is the kid that's facing us with his hand in the cast, not because he broke a board, but that was a whole different thing. Anyway, taught him how to sell as well, and also how to do it ethically. So how do you know? Because a kid can really hurt himself if you do this wrong, right?
No kidding.
So if you do it too soon, if you do it in the wrong context, if there's a lot of things that go into this to make sure that your students are getting the value out of this. And, trust me, a kid that's broken a board is a different kid than a kid who has not broken a board. And if you've got kids in martial arts, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Exactly.
It gives them a level of confidence and a level of faith in themselves that they didn't have before. But you have to sell the idea to them, mm-hmm. right? And you have to sell it to them at the right time for the right reason, right?
Yep.
So anyway, this is Mickey teaching a bunch of little kids how to break a board, and then this is them doing it. But what makes the difference, and what Master Zheng told Mickey, is that this is the difference. What's your intention? Are you doing it to be the greatest teacher in the world, or are you doing it because it's the right time and the right place for this kid, right? So it's all about the kid. And in the case of sales, it's all about the prospect. Is this the right thing for them? Is this the right time for them? Is this the right situation for them, or are you twisting their arm because you got to make the rent, right? Mm-hmm. They can tell, right? People can smell when they're being manipulated.
And there are times when, even though they know they're being manipulated, you can still sell. That doesn't mean it's right.
That doesn't mean it's right. Yeah, exactly. So this for us is the litmus test. Is it for your good, or is it, are you looking for a win-win or just a win for your side, right? Okay. So let's talk about the aviation industry for a minute. Who did a better job of selling their side of the story? This is in 2008 when the big four auto dealers each took separate private jets to Washington, D.C., and the press made a heyday out of it. I don't know if you remember some of the cartoons and other things that were just really ripping into private industry or private aviation and industry as being these evil people who are wasting money and so on by taking private jets. That's lasted for years, that it's been a kind of a stigma, and people are still listing their jets under shell companies and other kinds of things because they don't want their company associated with private aviation.
Never mind the government officials take Boeing 777s across the country with nobody else on it but themselves.
Right. But it's all about the story you tell, right?
Yep.
And it's all about what you sell to the public. So NBAA, to their credit, did a really good job of getting industry leaders and others to tell the side of the story of private aviation, saying, this is a tool the same as any other, and it can be used wisely or not, mm-hmm. and so on. And, this poster, Warren Buffett quote, can you really be there for your customers if you're not really there? There's a lot of really good ones where they've got great quotes from great business people. This was in 2011. So they're doing a good job of getting their story out there, but it is a little late to the party, and they have to be much better at it, and we all have to be much better at selling our side of the story, right?
True.
And this is true of speakers, educators, writers, everybody else. Being a better salesperson is going to help you do that, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So we are looking for good people, right?
Of course.
If you are not a good person, you need not apply, right? With good intentions, who want to get better at selling, right? And who like to collaborate with other people and who love win-wins. Those are the kind of people that we're looking for. Those are the kind of people we love working with. We have a webinar. This is going to be free. It's Wednesday, May 2nd at 1 p.m. Mountain Time.
It
right?
is the 2nd of May, right?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, okay.
Absolutely.
And so making sure I got the date right.
Right. So this is going to be a free webinar, and we'd really love for aviation speakers, writers, educators, people who need to influence folks in the aviation world and outside of it.
If you ever use the word convince, just realize that means sell.
Exactly. Who are willing and able to get better at sales. So this webinar is going to be essential sales skills for aviation speakers, writers, and educators. You can get there by going to abci1.com/writers. And that's a nice little shortcut for you. And then you'll get a notice where you can save your spot in that webinar. And we'll send you the details later about how to get there. So what we're going to be talking about is building your following. Whether you're a writer, a speaker, or an educator, you need to have a following of people who want to come to the next class you build, or want to read the next article you write, or want to come to the next lecture you give. We're going to talk about pitching your articles and proposals, getting better at that. We're going to talk about positioning for authority. And there is a bonus. Attendees will receive an exclusive handout of email templates that we're going to put together that will help you do this better, right?
Of course.
With all the wording and everything else, that's always the hardest thing to put together. So if you want to talk about this or anything else, you can also set up a consultation with us to talk about your specific situation. And thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
All right, and we'll see you May 2nd, and we'll also see you next week. Have a great day.